Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Monday, August 19th. We are here live. My co-host, Brent Hutto from TruckStop.com is here with me. Good morning, Brent.
And good morning, KR. How are you?
Good. You slid in right under the wire there.
Did I? I didn't know I slid it by the wire. Sorry, but I'll make a better effort.
No, it was perfect timing. I was kind of doing the same thing. I was getting set up, and I looked down, and I thought, I should be starting my show about right now.
Yeah, no doubt.
So how was your weekend?
No, it's been good. It was good. It was hot as ball blazes, as we say down here in the South, man. When a Southerner tells you it's hot, Kevin, is hot.
That's hot, yeah.
But it's one of those ones where you walk outside and the humidity is so high, it's just overwhelming. And between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. every day, it just bursts into rain because the humidity is so high. My daughter came home from working all summer, and she was getting ready to go back to college, and I wanted to be a good dad, and so I said, honey, your car is filthy. She goes, well, Dad, I just drove 2,500 miles back from California. And I said, let me take it to get it cleaned for you. So I went to the car wash place, and I always, I do all the outside work and everything, and I was just covered in sweat by the time I was done. So that's when you know it's out in Alabama.
I'll bet. I lived in Orlando for 14 years, so I know that whole high humidity.
I know you did.
Every afternoon. Now, on the other hand.
That's right.
So we have the opposite up here in the summer. We typically measure our summer between like 90 to 110 days of no rain at all. Just none. We don't get rain in the summertime. That's why, gardening, you have to irrigate everything. There's just no way around it.
Right.
There's just no rain whatsoever. I mean, it's crazy. And pretty low humidity. I mean, our temperature tends to stay in the 80s as our average, and very low humidity, so things are really dry. We've been here 12 years. In 12 years of living in Oregon and Washington, now here in the Gorge, I've never seen a summer storm. Every once in a while, we'll get some weird rain in the summertime, but it's unusual. Right. Nothing like a thunderstorm. And I grew up in the Midwest, and then in Orlando, you get thunderstorms every day.
You've seen them, yeah.
I like storms.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I kind of miss here is you get a lot of rain in the wintertime, none in the summertime, and almost never any kind of a storm. And we got hit by a storm over the weekend. We were out at the property. I was going to sleep in the tent because I usually do when I'm out there, just because I like to. And Lisa started telling me, she said, did you watch the weather? And I said, no. And she said, I'm not even staying here. She said, I'm going to go home. We're going to get hit with all kinds of lightning and wind. And I said, what? We never get that. And I don't even pay attention to the weather in the summertime because it hardly ever changes. So I lost a tree on the property. We had a tree down. Yeah. At the last minute, I decided there's no way I'm sleeping in the tent. So the tent got tore down and rolled up, and it was a mess. And we got blasted hard. Lots of lightning and heavy rain, big winds, just really unusual for us.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, I like sleeping in tents too, unless it's lightning out, and then that's a difficult place to be. I remember we were at the Boy Scout camp a couple summers ago, and you have no place to go except to get in your tent and stay low.
Yeah.
And that's up at about 6,000 to 11,000 feet. So. And for any of the Let's Truck tribe that's never camped at a higher altitude level, and I know this may sound obvious, but yes, the lightning and thunder is louder and louder and louder when you're up high.
It's closer.
It scares you to death. It's not like us flatlanders where we go, oh yeah, there's light, there's thunder over there, there's lightning. You get up high and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die.
Yeah. Lisa and I used to ride our four-wheelers and camp up at 9,000 feet in Colorado, and some of that weather there is just crazy.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. What else is going on?
No doubt. Well, there's a whole lot going on in the market. I tell you, we're getting into this part of now in the freight world where we are at Truck Stop. We got two really, really busy times of the year where we go out and we see the marketplace. Like you and I get together a lot of times in March in Louisville, Kentucky, and then we'll get together in April for the big broker show that happens, and that happens all different places of the country. And so there's two of the really bigger shows in the springtime, and then in the fall, right at the beginning of the fall, almost like when holiday season really starts, kind of peaking out. You've got all the user conferences. So if you use technology, and it's a big piece of technology for you, go to a lot of people go to an annual conference and learn how to use it better. And then there's big shows like the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, which is the big supply chain show that goes on. Freight Transportation Research has theirs. So there's lots of different shows that go on. There's the Armstrong and Associates show. There's all kinds of shows that go on, and I'm like super busy all of September and October. So I'm kind of getting ready to go into that. And so that's what I kind of get sort of spun up for and get ready to go. And so it's two big times of the year. And then of course, freight right now is what would, if you looked at the market, just if you took a snapshot today, you'd go, oh, well, it's down. Well, it's normally down at this time of the year. So after July 4th, it goes into a downward part of the curve, and then it starts coming back up once we get into after August ends, and then we start moving the holiday season. So that's kind of what. But if you just looked at it, you go, oh my gosh, the freight's just not doing so well, But it's just normal. It's just the normal dip in the summertime.
Most of the indicators in the economy, and you and I talk about the economy a lot because we have to. It's
absolutely
this show's about rates, and rates are driven by the economy, and the economy is driven by rates, and you can't really separate the two. And then, unfortunately, you can't separate politics from economics. It is a huge factor, and I think it's probably been one of the most confounding factors recently. We've talked about how nobody can really figure out where the market's going, and we see the same thing in the overall economy. It's just very confusing. There are some signs that look like everything's normal. It's just a normal trend. Right. We'll come out of this like we always have, but it doesn't feel like that this time. It almost feels to me like, and I just wonder, I talk to a lot of business people, I know you do too. Do you almost get the feeling people are kind of holding their breath and just waiting? And nobody wants to make any big decisions or do much. Just kind of being very, very conservative and safe right now.
Well, I think there's question marks out there. First off, Kevin, we're now in year 2 of a correction market after a 100-year happening to us as a population. So something that doesn't happen. Maybe it happens every 100 years. The pandemic. I mean, no one ever been through that. I mean,
right. Let me comment on that though.
So that
because the reason I want to is because I believe that it was not the pandemic that caused us all of our issues. It was the government's response to our pandemic. That's why I mean,
that's what I mean. Yeah, you and I are in the same boat there, Kevin. Yeah, 100% on that. Absolutely. Right. Yeah, no doubt. It's all well. That's a continuation of your story is in transportation. You want to know when the markets get more beneficial to the carriers and to the brokers in the marketplace who are moving the freight for the shippers. It's when the government's response, and when that's called regulation inside of transportation, and that's when those changes happen. Right. So there's not been a big market that's been super beneficial to small carriers, medium carriers, large carriers. That hasn't been a government related,
right?
And right. Because it pinches. Anytime you pinch capacity, in other words, you decrease the number of hours that a carrier can operate, you're going to drive prices up because there's not going to be fundamentally a whole lot more trucks on the road all of a sudden. That can't happen. It's too big of a marketplace for that to happen. Those changes happen slowly. And so when you don't have more of a supply of trucks, you're just going to have rates go up because there'll be more freight to move. So it's just a natural conclusion. And by the way, this makes me think. I picked up I picked up a book I wanted to make sure I recommended to you and to the Let's Trek tribe because I like economics. You and I talk about economics, but
Yeah.
you know what? Economics is kind of for those pinheads, right? It's for those pinheads, people that went, I just want to study the numbers. I'm just, I mean, you think of an economist, and
Right.
other than Noel Perry's really cool. Most economists are kind of like, oh, they're just economists.
You're right.
But I picked up one of the most, and I didn't know how famous this book was when I picked it up. So when I go in Barnes and Noble, my wife goes over to some section. I go into a bookstore.
Can I guess?
I always go to the business store. Yeah, jump in there.
Can I guess what book it is?
What? Go ahead. Yeah.
When you say about economics and unusual, and you didn't know how popular, is it the book Freakonomics?
No, but I like the Freakonomics, but that's a modern book. This is a book that was written in the 40s, updated in the 60s by a guy named Henry Hazlitt. And it says, it's titled, and I'll send you a picture of it, Economics in One Lesson. Look, if you got Spotify, it's on Spotify for free. You can go to the internet and download it, and someone's reading it. You can get it free if you want to. I like to read the physical word because it helps me absorb it better.
Me too.
But here's why I bought it. I turned over to the back of it. The modern economists in today's world follow a guy named the Austrian economists, the ones who are about business and production, and that's trucking. Right. We're about the business and production. They follow this guy named Ludwig von Mises.
Yes.
And the guy that I learned about Ludwig von Mises from was a guy named Milton Friedman, who was a massively successful and popular economist in the 60s.
Exactly.
Well, look, I turned the book over, and it says, Henry Hazlitt's explanation of how a price system works is a true classic, timeless, correct, painlessly instructive. Milton Friedman. I went, oh, and then there's a quote from F.A. Hayek, who's another big Nobel laureate.
Yes.
All these guys. Here's the thing. So this is for the whole Let's Start tribe. I like it simple. I like for me to be able to understand it. Yes, I know I'm from Alabama, but I can understand most things. So, but this book is so straightforward. It's so straightforward about understanding economics and the populations that experience them. And it's a great book. I'm about halfway through it now. I just finished with tariffs and price controls and all those things that a lot of people think, well, that's the best thing in the world for an economy. Read the book. You probably won't like them so much.
I am.
But anyways, great. It's Henry Hazlitt, Economics in One Lesson.
You made my day. This sounds like an awesome book.
Good.
I love book recommendations. I haven't read this one, but I think I've had the same education on economics that you have. With Friedman and the classics, and it all makes sense.
Thomas Sowell, another one of my favorites.
Yeah. It all makes sense to me. You know, I talk about trying to keep things simple all the time. It's one of my biggest themes.
Yeah.
I talk about things that can be incredibly complicated. I mean, if you've talked to Joel Morrow. In fact, aren't we getting ready to do a big podcast all together?
Oh. We sure are. We're going to do a podcast about that. We sure are. Looking forward to it.
Joel is incredible when it comes to fuel mileage. Brett, there was a time when you and I were probably traveling around doing our seminars and owner-operator stuff. I don't know if I ever said this out loud, but if I would have said it out loud to anybody, I probably would have said it to you. There was a time where I thought, is it possible, and I know this might sound really arrogant, but I thought, is it possible that I know more about heavy truck fuel mileage overall, the whole big picture, all the details, than anybody else in the country? Now, I knew there were engineers who know more about aerodynamics than I do and rolling resistant, but almost everybody I would talk to was very focused on their one area. And many of them didn't have any real-world experience in fuel mileage. They worked as an engineer somewhere in the background and didn't get a lot of real-world feedback. And I started thinking, it's not that I'm not smart, but has anybody else put this much focus into fuel mileage for this many years and studied all these different areas? And I thought, maybe I am, until I met Joel. And then I thought, no, I think Joel might be the guy that knows more about fuel mileage than anybody else. He knew everything I knew, and we agreed on almost everything. We had learned it the same way, real-world experience. Interestingly enough, we started in the industry about the same time, and for the first 10 years or so of my trucking career, him and I were about 2 hours apart. We lived that close. I never heard of him, didn't know him. I don't know how we missed each other all those years, but thought that was pretty incredible how much he knows. And when he starts talking about engine architecture, it gets incredibly complicated. But there are always ways to simplify things and make them more understandable. So, and the reason I tell this because it's interesting you bring it up like this. Just recently, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've had somebody start following me on social media, and I post a lot. And his whole gig is he follows me around, and no matter what I post, he makes some comment about how I just oversimplify everything to the point that it's just useless now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That seems like an uninformed statement. I mean, here's the thing. This is one of the things that made Albert Einstein so smart is he could explain things to people where they could understand it in layman's terms. And I'll tell you that another person that and this may be self-serving a little bit here, but I got into technology in 2013 with Truck Stop. I didn't know a whole lot about developing technology and systems and logistics and technology and logistics and all that sort of stuff. And I would go and talk to our technologist a lot, and I kind of still have that, like, that confused Labrador look, like,
right.
Okay, how's that work? And tell me, but here's what I would do. Here's what I'd do. This is and this. I'd go downstairs in the building because Scott Moskrip, our founder's office, was on the first floor, and I'd go in his office and I'd go, "Hey, you got a minute?" I said, "Can you explain this to me?" And he'd go, "Oh, yeah," and he would do it in 5 minutes, and I'd go, "Oh, I got it."
Nice.
I got it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and because he explains it in a very straightforward, linear way to, like, here's how this applies. Here's what this does. Here's how it applies. Here's how it works in the logistics world. Because Scott's design, and Truck Stop's always been this way, our design is design it for the one truck owner operator.
Right.
If it doesn't work for him or her, it's not valuable.
And you mentioned something earlier, user conferences, and my tribe.
Right. Oh yeah.
Sure. That's like that's not on anybody's radar. I've been to user conferences, but
that's what you do. Yeah,
exactly right. We've kind of thought about having our own, except our software is too simple to have a user conference around. Really, that's kind of the point. It's just too simple. You couldn't build a whole conference around using our software. It's designed for one truck. It's really simple. And people running really small businesses are running fairly simple software off the shelf. It's not a lot of really proprietary.
Right, and it should be.
Exactly. Right. That's the point. So I've been to user conferences. I get it. It's usually a fairly complicated piece of software. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it's usually really powerful software that can do a lot of things. And you do need to take time to learn and understand if you want to be efficient with it. But
right.
What I really try to boil things down to when I'm trying to help somebody understand something that could be complicated, how does it work in the real world, and what are the results you expect to get, and how do you get them? And how can we simplify that as much as possible? One of the I don't have a lot of cool quotes from myself, but I have one that I'm a little proud of. I had a cardiologist on the show with me, Dr. Wolfson. We were talking about the human body, and if you've ever had even a single biology class, or you've tried to understand some of the ways the human body functions, things like the Krebs cycle, it is so unbelievably complicated. Like, I honestly can't understand it. I'm not sure if I could have made it through medical school or not, and I'm pretty good at learning things and passing tests, but some of these things, the way the human body does stuff is just so complicated. We were talking about that, and I said, this is an area where it's so easy to fool people. because the more complicated somebody can make things, the easier it is to fool everybody. And I believe that. And I've worked in two areas where that is rampant: money and health. We have overcomplicated both of those areas so much that we believe we have to pay other people to do those things for us. And I try to show people you do not need to pay anybody to manage your money. This is simple stuff. And you don't need to pay anybody to be healthy. It's almost easier. And my quote was, the human body is incredibly complicated, but the owner's manual for being healthy is only one page.
Oh, that's a good quote.
And that's the way it should be.
All right, unwind that one. It's only one page.
The things we need to know to be outrageously healthy, I could fit on one page. It would be sentences like, eat mostly animal products, get lots of sun, get lots of clean water, plenty of salt. I mean, they're really, really basic things. And we could cover virtually every aspect of health with some advice and fit it all on one page. And if you didn't understand anything else about the human body or health, but you just followed the rules on that page, you'd be healthier than 99% of our population.
Oh, for sure you would. Yeah, for sure you would. So I love that. Your comment makes me think of this. The person who's responsible for you is you.
That's a good
one. Is. You know, I realize we use experts to help us, but in the end, you need to understand why the physician is saying this. You need to understand why the accountant is saying this. You need to understand those things. And part of this, it goes back to with it, that we have this intimidation by, like, for instance, I think about the tax code. Other than gun control laws, it's the largest document, I think, in the federal government, the tax code is. And so it shouldn't be.
No,
it should be so simple that an everyday citizen should be able to understand it and do it for themselves. And so I think about things, Kevin, like if you really understand how government works, you'll understand that it'll never shrink. And people go, oh, what do you mean? Of course it can. I go, nope.
No.
If you understood what baseline budgeting was.
Correct.
And that our elected officials can vote themselves a raise, and they are not suspect to our own health insurance that we have to pay. They have their own.
And their own Social
Security and
retirement, right? Yep.
Right, and their own Social Security. Yep. You realize really quick how this operates. And to me, when I heard about baseline budgeting, I was just shocked. Yeah. I was shocked. And most the average citizen does not know what that is. And you look at something and say, no, they've cut the budget. No, they just didn't increase it by how much they thought they were going to increase it by.
It's the same way they try to explain inflation today. Oh, look, inflation went down this month.
Right.
No, it did not. It just didn't go up as much as it did last month.
Right.
There's a big difference between those two facts.
Yeah.
And
so I think about it. So you talked about user conferences, and I think for the one truck, two truck owner operator, three truck owner operator out there, that your program every day is like a mini user conference. You're teaching on something, about something. So and if they sign into your Let's Truck Tribe and they can get the CMC education all year long, then they're getting a high level user conference in teaching schedules all at their convenience all year long. And so to me, that you do bring forth the user conference for the owner operator. I mean, you can go to Mid-America and look at some of the education sessions, and they're good. There's good basic information there. But if you really want to get into the middle of your business, you really do need a partner that helps and understands and wants the best for your business. And so, I've just watched the CMC over my 25 years in the market, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know another one that covers it from top to bottom like yours does.
Thank you. I agree, and you're right that is kind of a user conference. I was thinking more, directly software related, but you're right. You're kind of like a professional event attendee, aren't you? You attend a lot of conferences, probably more than anybody else I know.
I had a guy say one time, he was introducing me. Believe it or not, I was in Mexico negotiating a deal between Russell Athletic, the big apparel manufacturer that's based here in Alabama,
right,
and the largest manufacturer of apparel in Mexico. At that time, the company was named PIPSA. PIPSA is like Pantalones International something.
Yeah.
Look, the big thing that the Mexican company did was they were the largest manufacturer of women's bras and panties in the world. So, which was unique. So, but I'm negotiating this deal, and the guy's introducing me. And he goes, "This is so and so from PIPSA. This is so and so from PIPSA. This is so and so from Russell Athletic, and this is Brent. He's an entertainer." I was like, "What?" So I laughed. It was kind of funny, but I'll laugh for it.
Speaking of which, I posted, talk about simplifying things, and this guy was following me around and telling me I'm oversimplifying things to the point of they're just now useless. And I said, look, I'm going to make one of the biggest problems in our country right now really, really simple.
No.
And I said that problem is the health of the American population. The amount of people with diabetes, prediabetes, and metabolic syndrome is a catastrophe, and we do not understand how bad it is and how bad it's going to get. And I said, here is the facts. You can say I'm oversimplifying all you want, but dispute just one fact in here. The fact is that we can simplify diabetes. I can make it incredibly complicated, and I can talk all day about it. We could bring in 10 doctors. We could talk for 3 weeks about it. Or we can really say we don't need to understand all of that stuff. Here's what it comes down to. There are things that lead us to this point, but once we get to this point, your body is now intolerant of carbohydrates. We call it insulin resistance. If you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar spikes, your body has to release insulin.
Yep.
That is diabetes.
Yep.
The high blood sugar causes all kinds of damage throughout our body, and the high insulin causes damage that nobody ever talks about. That is diabetes in a nutshell, and it will lead to metabolic syndrome, which includes a whole bunch of other diseases that we see every day. This is simple.
Right.
Stop eating carbohydrates. The body stops dumping insulin, and diabetes goes away. It really is that simple. 2 sentences, and this entire problem can be cured. Now, how do you do that in the real world when our food supply is just a mess and everybody's telling everybody it's not the sugar, it's the fat, and I understand why everybody's confused, but this is really simple to understand and simple to fix if you just follow some really basic stuff. Do you know what his response was?
What's that?
He circled on my profile. He took a screenshot of my profile and circled the word, I don't even know. Oh, media personality. He said, here's the problem.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm a listed.
Oh, he was saying you can't have an opinion because you're a media personality.
Yeah, I can't know anything about this stuff because all you are is a media personality. That was his approach. I said, well, just stop all that. Huh. Argue the facts that I just posted. Who cares who they came from or where they came from? Tell me how they're wrong. And of course he can't because it's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, well, last time I checked, we all have brains. I mean, use them. Just use your brain. All right. So your body experiences things in its 20s, its 30s, its 40s, its 50s, its 60s, and they're different because of your makeup, because of your age, because of your body processing things, because of your weight, all those things, and these things change, and so you've got to adjust with them. And so it's baffling to me where people think that if you don't have some type of a moniker by your name, or you didn't go to school for this specifically, that you can't use your brain and read the same information and go, oh, well, that's how that works.
So,
I mean, somebody else, the doctors figured it out, or the medical community figured it out. And who runs the medical community? Oh, other people, just like everybody else. It's right there for you to go do your research on. Same thing I said about knowing about the government, how our government works, and how these things work. It's right there. Just go do the research. You don't have to have an expert to be informed.
So along those same lines, since I'm
Yeah.
And I even make a point to tell people when I start talking about, health and that, I'll make it a point to say I'm an ex-truck driver because it just kind of freaks them out. Oh, yeah, what do you know? You're not in the medical field. No, I'm not. I'm an ex-truck driver. That's how simple this stuff is.
Right.
But on the other hand, I could bring in people really impressive with all kinds of credentials, and they'd agree with me. In fact, I had one recently. Have you heard this name yet? Have you heard of either Casey Means or Callie Means? It's a brother and sister.
Mm-mm.
You're probably going to. She's got a great story. She's young. She was top of her class at the medical school at Stanford. She came out and became a surgeon, really, really impressive medical career. And then she realized how screwed up our medical system is, how totally backwards everything is, and how we don't need all these surgeries that she was doing every day. We don't need all these drugs. She really discovered the same kind of health stuff we talk about every day. And with her knowledge of the human body, and obviously she's incredibly intelligent, to be at the top of the class at Stanford, she walked away from it all. And she now runs her own clinic separate from the medical field and doing the exact opposite of what she was doing, now doing all the same stuff we talk about here. Her brother has an interesting perspective on all this because he was a big food insider working at companies like Pepsi, and he understands all the health issues that have been caused by these big food companies. So he's out there exposing, how bad the system is, and she's helping people understand you don't even need the system to be healthy. And I read her book when it first came out. We got her on the show, and I'm glad I got her on the show then. She is becoming so popular, I doubt that I would have ever gotten her on. She just did a huge interview with Tucker, and then some really big names picked up on the interview.
That'd be Tucker Carlson, right?
Tucker Carlson, yeah. Tucker's one of those guys that really only needs one name. You know who, right? You know who we're talking about.
That's fair. Yeah, Tucker, Beyonce.
Yeah, right.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So JFK picked up on it and has been endorsing her everywhere, saying, read this book, follow her. Some huge accounts on social media. So she's really knocking it out of the park between her and her brother. And it's good. This message needs to get out. But she would come on the show and agree with everything. Well, she did. Her and I talked for an hour on the show, and she really just agreed with everything we've always talked about. It really can be that simple.
Okay.
And speaking
so
of...
I'm assuming she's still... And yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead with her.
No, I was going to say, one of the things that's always you hear all the time is that they're a board certified something. So I'm assuming she's still a board certified physician.
I would have to double check, and here's why. Many of the doctors that are walking away from that... Now, I will say she was absolutely board certified in several things. I mean, she was a is it ENT, ear, nose, and throat? Yeah. ENT surgeon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she was board certified in many things.
Okay.
I don't know if she's going to hold and continue her certifications or not. Here's why.
Yeah.
She could practice in a way that she would not require those. And many of these doctors have figured out that the problem is their licensing board because they will be censored over this stuff. They won't be allowed to say these things if they want to maintain their licensing.
That, yeah.
Right. I when I have doctors on the air and they are still board certified, I'm very cognizant of that. And I'll say, I know you can't say this, but I can. And that is the truth. They can't say things in public. They will be censored. They'll be reprimanded. They'll be punished. They'll be fined. And they could lose their licensing over some of this stuff. And I can say it because I don't have a board to answer to.
Right.
We had...
it makes sense.
We had Tim Noakes on the show. Tim Noakes is a doctor in South Africa, and he was one of the really, really early guys into low carb and keto, and one of the early guys to figure this out with athletes and runners. You know, what's the whole world of long distance running? It's carb loading. Has been for years.
Oh, sure it is. Yeah.
You carb load ahead of the event. You carb load when you train. You carb load when you run. And people were becoming diabetic over this, and they were long-distance runners and triathletes. And they were becoming pre-diabetic because of all the carb loading. And he did the research, and he started recommending low carb. And here's all that he did. He recommended low carb to a pregnant woman on social media, and the South African government took him to court over it twice.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how bad it can be. And he gave up, I believe.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we had him on the show from South Africa, and I believe he gave up his all of his board certifications. A lot of doctors are starting to say, look, I don't need them. I can help people be healthy without all of that stuff, and I need to be able to say what I want to say.
Well, certainly it's amazing how the medical field continues to, and I'm just a citizen. Okay, I have no, other than my own personal experience, that's the only thing I'd ever speak from, is that I don't know. You should just know about your body, do your research, find out about these things. I know that I've been following a low carbohydrate diet for years now at the advice of having a dinner with you, and I can tell it's had great benefits for me.
And that's I
can give you my only thing I can give you is my firsthand experience, right?
And that's what I try to tell people. Look, let's just look at results. We could argue the science on everything. We could argue the economics. We can argue the health science. We can argue, and we do. We argue about the weather. We argue about everything. But if you want to know what works, just start looking around for results. Who really gets wealthy over time and has for decades? People who constantly jump on and off bandwagons like Bitcoin and day trading and all this other goofy stuff, or the people that are doing the same advice that was given 100 years ago around money. All these new money instruments and Bitcoin and all it hasn't changed basic economics, and the basic ideas behind all this stuff still work. And all you have to do is look around and see. I just read an article on Dave Ramsey, and talk about somebody who has been so consistent over time.
Oh, what a fun guy!
Yeah, he is. He talks about how simple this really is, and this article was about his 3 favorite, asset classes. He really likes real estate. He had a real estate license early on, and he built his first fortune in real estate. Lost one in real estate too, and almost went bankrupt. He teaches something that is so absolutely basic, and he just says it over and over and over, and he's been for decades. And people try to argue that his methods are wrong. And in some ways, if you use math, you can't really say his methods are wrong, but you could make the argument that they're not the best way to build wealth. That there are these tricks and strategy. The problem is he takes into account human nature. And when you start down the path of these tips and tricks and strategies, and we're going to screw the credit card company because we're going to use our credit card for everything, and we're going to get all these points, and we're going to borrow money against our mortgage at 3%. We're going to go invest it and get it at 10%. All of those things look good on paper. The math works. They never work in real life.
No, they don't. They don't. It's
and he teaches.
I'm always amazed by it.
Simple, basic stuff, and he says it over and over and over. His advice has not changed in like the 30 years I've been following him.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, mine's been about over 20. That we actually followed that principle, and when I got married to my wife, I really I credit her for most of this because I was a big risk taker. And look,
Me
there's
too.
nothing wrong with taking risks. But
Me too. Yeah.
If you want to gain, you have to take risks. But she was a no debt person. And I was like, what do you mean no debt? I said, no, that's not a bad thing. She said, no, that's a bad thing. She said, her dad is that way. And so the only debt we've ever had is our mortgage on our house. And it's within it's always within the percentage principles of how much my salary was, or my monthly income and that's bring home. It's not gross. It's bring home salary. And so, here's the benefit, Kevin, to that is that I've been married. Next year will be 30 years.
Wow! Congratulations.
For the most part, yeah, I know. I'm getting old. For the most part, Teresa and I have never really argued about money because we've never been in a spot where it was desperate.
That's a good point.
And that doesn't mean we didn't have challenges. Remember, I got 5 kids. I got a bunch of weddings and a bunch of. I got 2 of them in college right now, and all these sort of things. But in the end, we've never been in a desperate situation, and so it allows our relationship to continue to have peace. To have peace.
That's a wonderful thing.
And so that's big. Yeah. So anyway, so that was so that's why I credit my wife, and so I've of course adopted it. Why have I adopted it? Because I've seen the effects and the positive effects has been on my life, and I just give you my life. I do this all the time, but it's just my life. I just give you that standpoint of experience, and then you can take that and apply it in yours to however it fits your life.
Here's a good example, quick, that I can explain, and then we're going to take a call. And phone lines are open.
Oh, cool. Great.
Start calling. We're going to get to calls. Here's one example of how, and he's taken a lot of heat over this because mathematically it is not the best way. And that is when you have a lot of debt, say you've got credit cards and personal loans and car loans and all this debt. Mathematically, if you wanted to tackle that debt in the most efficient way monetarily, you would start paying down the debt more aggressively that has the highest interest rate. You would go through all of your
Ramsey, right? Yeah.
You would go through all of your loans, and you would say, okay, this one has the highest interest rate, so I'm going to pay a minimum on all these others, and I'm going to take all the extra money and I'm going to pay it towards the highest interest rate. Dave Ramsey says, no, don't do that. Now, mathematically, it's correct. You can't argue. It really is math, and you can't argue that it's correct. But he says, you're discounting human nature. And he said, I have found that it works better if you lay out all of your debt and you take the biggest balance and put it at the bottom of the list. And you take the smallest balance and you put it at the top. And then
I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
Smallest balance to biggest balance. And it almost seems totally backwards. And he says, ignore the interest rates. I don't care what they are. I don't care how different they are. This works. And you take all that extra money and you pay off that smallest debt because you pay it off quick and it feels like a win. And then you get momentum, and then you move on to the next one, and you pay it off, and you start to feel good about this. And it absolutely works, and it is not the best way mathematically to do this. And people want to argue with him all the time because they can say, no, look, here's the math, you're wrong. And he'll say, I get it, I know the math, but I'm telling you, this works better in the real world. And it does, every time.
Well, it's kind of like in the modern world we live in, it's kind of game theory for human beings. So the more success you have at something, the more rewards you get, the more likely you are to continue to do it.
Yeah.
So Dave Ramsey is saying create a model of success for you in the good feeling you're going to get with paying your debt off. Start with the one you can handle the fastest, and then work up to the big one. Then by that time you will have developed like the muscle memory to be able to just continue to stay at it, and then you'll knock the biggest one out. Yep, absolutely. He's right. I mean, from a humanistic standpoint, do you want success, or do you want just a short-term success that doesn't follow all the way through?
Right.
He's not wrong.
No, and it works. It's effective and it works in the real world. That's the test for me. You can argue research and math and all these other things, but what gets the best results in the real world?
Right.
And that's usually how you can simplify things. So one more thing, and then we're going to get to the calls.
All right.
What do you think? You know Noel pretty well.
Oh, sure.
If we had Noel here right now, and we were to ask him, what do you think about this crazy proposal of putting price controls on grocery stores and food companies is going to do to our economy?
Oh my gosh. I think he'd blow a gasket on telling you how bad that is.
Should we get him on the show next Monday to talk about that?
We sure can. We can get him on, no problem.
That would be fun. I would love to hear his,
I
know how I feel about this.
Let me write this as a note to myself as Noel price controls. Okay, I'll get it. He'll be on next week. No problem.
Let me tell you one thing that because there are people that think this is a good thing, and I think there's too many.
Oh gosh,
that's what I'm worried about. Yeah. Here's one thing I just try to get across to them to see. To at least think about that this could never stop. This isn't a matter of just putting price controls on some grocery stores and restaurants. The minute you do that, and my God, if people understood economics, if you've ever looked at the margins in a grocery store, I don't know how they stay in business. Tiny. They have some of the worst margins I have ever seen. And this idea that they're price gouging is just total insanity. What a joke. Just look at their financials. But here's the thing to think about. The minute you put price controls on the grocery store, you also have to put price controls on all of their suppliers. If you put the price controls on a grocery store that has tiny, tiny margins and any one of their suppliers raises the price, it's game over. They have to drop that line of product. This is how we end up with empty shelves in stores and shortages. Because now you've got to go to all of their suppliers and say, oops, sorry, we have to put price controls on you because you can't be allowed to raise your prices to the grocery store because you'll put them out of business.
Well, I'll go back to a great statement. I believe it was by Ronald Reagan. And he said, the government makes a bad parent. And so when you have government intervention into things like that, it is a race to the bottom for everyone. I mean, in a sense, you've got that in healthcare now, where you've got price controls on what you can do, surgeries and the other things and so you're seeing the effect of that of less and less of the most qualified people that want to get into the medical field. Right. Because they realize they're smart. They can get a better return on their brain and their activity doing something else. And it used to be, people, if you got into the medical field, you enjoyed a good financial life. If you got into the specialist field, you enjoyed a better life. If you got in the surgery field, you had a better life because you're taking more risk and doing more talented and qualified things. But that's not the case anymore. I have a good friend of mine who is a retired heart surgeon, and he said the government intervention into the healthcare is what drove him out of the business.
Absolutely.
So, because he would have to work 3 times as hard to get the same return he got 20 years earlier.
Which is awful. And that ties into what we were talking about earlier. All these doctors walking away from their board certifications and practicing in the way they want to practice to actually make people healthy, they're taking a huge risk because insurance won't pay for any of the stuff they do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
So for them, it's
So you want to take a call?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Let's go to Pennsylvania. Darren, welcome.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Darren.
You're welcome.
You got it, man.
Hey, I think Angie sent over an oil sample to you, maybe my oil sample. I wanted to get your advice on the lead readings. And I don't know if the one she sent over has the last 5 like the history of the last 5 or
Yes.
not.
Yeah, I have all 5
But-
here, so I'm kind of looking back on the history, and I will say that I'm not really seeing why you had that climb in lead. So give me some history. Was there anything going on with the truck when that lead was climbing? Was there work being done? What might have caused that? Because I'm not seeing anything in the oil sample that would have caused increased lead.
No, nothing other than it was just the oil was getting more and more miles on it. But the highest mileage I ran on the oil was at 72,000 something, and I changed it out. So, no, and then this last round I changed it at 50,000, and I was back up at 14 again.
Yeah, let me try to.
So I don't know. I don't have any other reasons.
I'm going to go through it's a little hard to go back on these, but let me correlate the mileage on this. So on that one, we were at 18. And that one was 50,000 miles. Then we went to 32 on the lead, and that was at. Now that's partially the explanation. Now the oddball is you went to 80,000 once and only had 6 on the lead. So it looks like it could have been correlated just to mileage, but. There might have been some other weird thing going on. The good news here, lead did start to climb, which would indicate bearing wear, but now it's back down again, and copper never climbed. So whatever was going on, we just got a little bit of lead wear somewhere. Could have even come from the compressor, may not have come from the engine itself. There's nothing in the oil that would tell us why it happened. We didn't have any coolant intrusion. We didn't have any dirt getting in the engine. We didn't have any fuel dilution. There's nothing that really explains that little spike, but it's not enough to worry about, and now it's back down. So all we can do at this point is just watch it.
Okay. And the reason I want calling is I actually have my truck scheduled to go into Pittsburgh Power on the 20th of September.
Yeah.
And would you recommend them checking the bearings while it's in there, or not even at this point? There's not enough. There's nothing enough that would even make it worthwhile yet.
I can promise you those bearings will look like new.
Okay.
We can't.
That answers my question. Then
we really can't physically inspect the bearing and see a problem until there's some copper, and you had no increase in copper anywhere. So if we don't get all the way through that lead, wait a minute, what year is this truck? Oh, this is a 12.7. I have to be careful because the new trucks no longer have lead-coated bearings. This is a big change. We have we have to remember this. They're using a composite now, so we don't have that same easy early warning about bearings that we used to have. The other good news, though, is these new bearings are almost indestructible. So I don't think we're going to see many problems where we have to talk about bearing wear.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on my oxidation? I know you say not to worry about it terribly much, but why am I getting orange flags and red flags on that? Like, what's your take on that?
Usually, there are 2 things that can oxidize oil. Just time being exposed to oxygen. That's what oxidation is. We don't see that very often. The other one that will do it is heat. And these engines run hot, and we want them to run hot. And occasionally you'll get some hot spots in an engine that will oxidize oil. I've never followed up on an oxidation problem that ever really was a problem or that we could do anything about.
Okay.
So most of the time, I just ignore oxidation.
That answers my question.
If we had a truck that was consistently putting out high oxidation numbers, we would start looking for a problem, and we would be looking for excessive heat somewhere. But we see trucks that spike once in a while. A lot of times it might just be summertime, and you had a couple heavy loads where on a big hard pull, the engine got a little hotter than normal, and that can oxidize the oil.
Okay. Good enough.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for the call. Hey, Brent, that's one of those areas where
Yeah, man.
we could get incredibly complicated on what's going on with all that oil chemistry and this caused this and that. But really what I try to do is say, what matters in the real world? Do we really need to dive into that whole oxidation thing and figure out where it's coming from when in the real world, there's no real negative consequences to this? We can just kind of ignore it.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. I love listening to stuff because it's just amazing how I love how you caught yourself there. Then you go, hold on. What age is your truck?
Yeah.
And so you started figuring out what type of bearings those were, and then you figured out the new bearings versus the old bearings. And so, what a great catch, man! It's making the complex simple. That's the key.
And here's the thing: I don't remember how we finally discovered that. As much as reading as I do, you would think this would have been a fairly big thing. Somebody would have been reporting on this. One of the things we can tell in an oil sample that is really valuable is if those engine bearings start to wear. And we could tell it because the core of the bearing is copper and the outer coating is lead, and we measure both lead and copper in an oil sample. So when you see lead start to increase and it's consistent, and then you see copper, you've worn through the outer coating of the bearing and you've got a problem. We have to deal with this. We're probably going to have to replace those bearings. And then we had a truck that had all the signs of bearing issues, but I kept looking at the oil sample and saying, you can't possibly have worn bearings. We would see it. We always see it in an oil sample. And we had to keep digging and digging. I don't remember how we came up with it, but we found out that they had changed the way they're making bearings. And we can't use those old rules anymore. And now we don't measure that outer coating. So if these bearings start to wear, we're not going to have any way of knowing it yet. So I'm trying to figure out, is that something they're going to be able to sample for eventually? But I don't have an answer on that one yet. Hey.
Well, the interesting thing to me was, yeah, man.
Well, I was going to say, are you okay on time? Because I want to get to one more call because it's about truck stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get one more call, and then I'll need to go. We had an internet outage on Friday afternoon. I got to finish a podcast. So.
We could do a whole show about internet
let's take another call. This would be great.
Couldn't we?
Oh my gosh! Don't get me started. Yeah, just it went out 3 times this weekend, and mostly because all these electrical storms we've had in Alabama.
Oh yeah. All right, let's go north of the border. Mateus in Ontario, what's on your mind today?
Good morning. I wanted to see if Brent could tell me if there was any way we can get truckstop.com to enter the Canadian market. We've got one load board here. They run a monopoly. They know they're running a monopoly. Their load board is no good. Their app is a joke, and their customer service is... Well, they know they got a monopoly, so there's not much to be had there. So we need some competition here.
Right. We do. What's interesting is we have about somewhere around 1,000 accounts that are from Canada, but they do business in the U.S., and so it kind of goes back and forth to both sides. And so you said your name is Andreas, is that right?
Matthias.
I'm sorry. It kind of breaks up sometimes. Matthias?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. And so we do a decent amount of business in Canada, but we don't have a specific product for Canada. Are you saying that it would be better for you if there were some specific parts that were designed for the Canadian market?
Yes, pretty much. Like I do Canada only. I know Truckstop and that they have some cross-border freight on there. But for just within Canada, there is LoadLink, and that's pretty much all there is. There has been a couple of attempts.
And always has been, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's been a couple of attempts from others to start a new load board, but they somehow never got far with it. And so, yeah, we just got this one expensive option here.
I'd love to talk to you about it. If you could get my number from Kevin's from, I guess maybe Angie took your phone call. I'm not sure who lined you up, but if you could just get my phone number from them and my email and just reach out to me and let's just talk maybe what are the opportunities there. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
All right.
I can tell you what's going on. Yes.
I will put you.
Do you have any other questions?
I had some input on the bearings since you were just talking about it.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm originally from Europe. I follow the market there. MAN has a bunch of trouble with these newer bearings. So they were legislated by the government to create bearings with no lead.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So they're having a bunch of issues, I think, that affects MAN engines from 2016 to 2019. I'm assuming those will be like the first ones.
Okay.
With the different style bearings. At a certain time, these bearings do fail because they're more susceptible to contamination in the oil. And they usually fail catastrophically as when the engine blows up. You get a hole in the block, and now the oil gets splattered out to this extremely hot engine because we were just saying they run hotter. So they have an official record of 170 trucks catching fire because of those bearings. And there's probably a bunch more unreported, recalled. They recalled, I forgot the numbers, like 60,000 trucks or something that have been recalled. Or they recalled 120 and only 60,000 haven't been done yet or something. It's wild numbers. I can send you some articles, but you just have to punch them in a Google Translator. But
yeah, so here's, Brent, this might be a weak spot for me. I'm kind of like an eternal optimist. I assumed, and we know we shouldn't assume, and I have it on my list to go do all the research. I just haven't got to it yet. But I assumed we created a new bearing coating because it was a better bearing, a better coating. And that's why I said these things should be bulletproof because our current bearings will last 1,000,000 miles plus if you take care of them. And I thought, well, if they changed, they must have changed to make a better bearing. But now it sounds like we changed just to get the lead out of there. Look, I am absolutely all for the fact that we needed to take lead out of gasoline. That was a horrible idea. I'm glad we fixed that. I'm glad we don't paint the inside of houses and toys with lead paint anymore with kids chewing on them. That was a really good thing. Lead on a bearing inside of an engine, nobody's chewing on it. Nobody's coming in contact with ungodly amounts of lead because if that's why we did this, that will make me crazy. If it turns out that this is not a better bearing, that it's worse, and we did it just because we think we need to get the lead out of there, and now we don't. This is why you're seeing catastrophic failures, because we have no way to see it's coming. With a lead copper bearing, you should, as long as you're oil sampling, you should never have a catastrophic failure because we can see it long before it becomes a problem. But now we can't, unless somebody figures out a new way to measure this stuff in an oil sample. Brent, why were you muted? Did you mute yourself?
Yes, sir.
Were you?
I know. I think I hung up on you mistakenly. So, I apologize. I had to dial back in. Sorry about that.
Got it. All right. So I just went off on a rant because it turns out that these bearings may not have changed because it's a better bearing, which I assumed it was. It sounds like we're changing this because we don't want lead in the bearing anymore. What a mistake.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So, Matthias, thank you for that. I'm going to put you back in the queue, and we will get the information so we can get you hooked up with Brent. Hey, Brent, one more thing real quick.
Yeah, man.
Do you remember who
what you got?
Ann Landers?
Say it again?
Do you remember Ann Landers?
Ann Landers. Oh, yeah, the advice person. Yeah. The advice to the, I think Ann Landers was the advice to the common housewife or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that who Ann Landers was?
Talk about simplifying something and being brilliant at it.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever heard her explanation of the difference between socialism, communism, fascism, Nazism, and anarchism and capitalism? Have you ever heard her explain that whole thing? Because that could.
I haven't. I have not.
I can do this in less than a minute. And this
wait a second, Kevin. Wait a second. According to your other principle that somebody wanted to put on you, Ann Landers is not an expert on any of that stuff. She can't even speak to it.
You're right, but listen to this.
I mean, I can't believe
it is
that she would listen to someone's. I mean, it's like you can't have your own opinion. Anybody, go ahead.
This is brilliant. Socialist. She's just going to explain the isms. So in socialism, you have two cows. You give one to your neighbor. In communism, you have two cows.
Right.
Give both cows to the government, and they may give you some milk. In fascism, you have two cows.
Right.
You give all of the milk to the government, and the government sells it. In Nazism, you have two cows. The government shoots you and takes both cows. Anarchism, you have two cows. You keep both cows, shoot the government agent, and steal another cow. In capitalism, you have two cows. You sell one and buy a bull.
To make more cows.
Exactly.
By the way, this comes all the way back to the book I was talking about, the Economics in One Lesson. He says, and this is a pure Austrian, so you get two different views. You get Austrian and Keynesian.
Right.
Keynesian economics believes the government should be involved in an economy. Austrian economists believe that it should just be a free market. It should run that way.
Yes.
His point, Henry Hazlitt's point, and every Austrian economist's point is the only way for any economy to increase is to increase its production. If you can't increase its production, you're not helping, because you can't look at just one single effect. You have to look at the effect over the entire economy and how it affects every single group. And that's what Austrian economist does. And this is why I'm loving this book and recommend it to your tribe.
I'm going to start reading this book today. It was perfect time.
Fantastic.
I'm in between. Actually, did I tell you about I keep telling you I'm going to let you go. If you have to go, just go, because I'll keep talking. But,
okay. I will get one last statement, then I got to roll.
Did I tell you about the Fight Club, the debate thing I was trying to do on Spaces?
Yeah, last week we talked about that no one had taken you up on your Fight Club, and I gave you the idea of talking about regulations. Are they good or are they bad?
Yeah, nobody will debate me no matter what the topic is. So the whole Fight Club thing is died on the vine. Again, I've tried it before. I thought I had a better idea this time. So I'm going to do a space today. I want to come up with a regular space on Monday afternoons because I have some time, but I don't want it to be the same as my show is every day. Okay. So why bother? That's why I keep trying to come up with new ideas. Today we're going to throw out the idea. We're going to make it a book club.
Okay.
So here's a really, really quick book. You could listen to this on a short flight, or you could read it on a short flight, because I know you, like me, prefer to read when you can.
Okay.
Did you ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh, I've read it many times. That's one of the best business books ever, because it helps people understand life is going to change.
I've been recommending it forever. I read it a long, long time ago, but I didn't realize that the author, Spencer Johnson, wrote another short parable book like that called Peaks and Valleys.
Oh, wow. I'd love to read that. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, so that's my book club book for today, Peaks and Valleys. It was a recommendation from one of my listeners. I had no idea it existed.
Wow. Well, if it's anything like his first one, then it'll be easy to read and easy to understand.
Well, isn't that the theme for today now? Kind of simple and easy, right? Life does not have to be so complicated.
Yeah, no doubt. One of my other favorite guys, and I know you've read some of his stuff, is Patrick Lencioni, who talks. He's got a whole series of books that I've just enjoyed immensely, because he says this. I've heard him speak live. He's like, "Look, I'm so ADD. It has to be simple, or I'll just forget. I'll just not even finish it."
Yeah.
He goes, "So I write books, and they're like parables, and because they're all about a short story about how to apply this in the business, and they're all fantastic."
Well, Brent, believe it or not, I've never even heard the guy's name.
Yes, sir. What? No, oh my gosh, Pat Lencioni's fantastic.
Spell the last name.
You got the four dysfunctions. Lencioni, Lencioni, Cioni. And his big book was it's either the 4 or 5 dysfunctions of a team, and it's fantastic. It just talks about it's just so. But he's great across the board. Yeah, and across the board, he's just everything I've ever read from him is just fantastic.
I have a new author. Now you really made my day.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow, I try to. This friendship keeps paying off.
Now that you've made my day, you can get on with the rest of your day because I know you're busy.
Well, it's always great to be on, Kevin. Just really appreciate what you do to help owner operators in the trucking industry out there. Just everyone, just keep focusing on this marketplace is going to start to come back, and it'll be more beneficial. Look, it's never easy. None of it's ever easy. We just got to keep pressing on. Focus on things you can control, like Kevin always says. And look, that helps me in my life too, just in Brent's personal life. Focus on things you can control, and usually everything else will take care of itself.
Excellent stuff. Brent, have a great day. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you. Hey, and I know you wrote it down, so you won't forget. We'll get Noel
for next Monday on price controls.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Have a great day.
It'll be great. I'll get him around. Thank you. Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's get to some phone calls. I'll hang out. I am going to cut things off. Actually, I'm going to cut things off at 9:30 today. So we've got about 20 minutes for phone calls here. So jump in if you've got something, because I do want to go get ready for the space today. I want to do a good book review. I've read the book, but I did not have time to go back over my notes. The way that I read books, especially on my Kindle, it's so easy for me to take notes when I read on my Kindle. All I have to do when I see a sentence I want to remember or talk about, I just highlight it on my Kindle and it saves it to a list. And then at the end, I can just print out that list, make all my notes. So I've got to do that today. So we're going to cut off a little early. Jake, welcome.
Yes. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Well, trying to just gauge how I'm doing in this up and down crazy industry that we're in nowadays over the past few years. I don't know if Angie got my profit gauges sent over to you with my numbers and that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, roughly in the industry standard, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go, because I just got this. I just opened it up, and I've talked about this in the past, the phrase, the bottom line. We use it all the time. Most people probably never even stop to think where that phrase came from. It comes from a profit and loss statement. The bottom line shows us our profit. The rest of the stuff shows us how we got to our profit, but ultimately our goal is profit. So that's why we say when things are really important, what's the bottom line? That's what we're talking about. That's where that phrase came from. Well, when I sat down to write this program in the software, I broke all the rules of accounting. Just about everything I did backwards and different from what you're supposed to do in accounting, because I just wanted it to be effective for small companies. Really, really simple. And in order to do that, we had to break some rules that really didn't matter anyway. And I got thinking, I've broken all these rules of accounting and it's working really well. If the bottom line is so important, why don't we put it at the top? So I did. On the business report, the summary is the very first line. And when I look at yours, I only had to look at one number. So I kind of know where this conversation is going to go. And your now this is 2022 I'm looking at now. So I got to clarify that. And then we're going to look at 2023. In 2022.
Correct. And I just got to thinking
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I just got thinking I had 2 trucks on there. One is my old truck, and I hope you're looking at I didn't even think about telling her that. The one for the 660 would be the one to look at. Over on the left where, it has company and stuff like that.
From this report, I don't think I know what I'm looking at, but I'll tell you the numbers and then maybe you can tell me. So I'm looking at January through December, the entire year of 2022. And the first number I look at, I haven't looked at anything else yet, and I will here in a second. The profit per mile was $1.02. That's pretty hard to beat. I mean, I know the direction of the call. You have no major issues we're going to be talking about. We might tweak some things, if that. $1 a mile profit is a lot of money. Because if we think about it, with this profit, if you want to go run 130,000 miles, which isn't all that difficult, really, you can look at it and go, well, if I do that, I'll make $130,000 this year. That's a pretty darn nice number, and it's easy to calculate in your head because it's basically a buck a mile. The 2 cents is kind of a bonus. So then I jump down to the bottom line. Wait a minute, what just changed here? Oh yeah, that was your profit per mile. So then I jump down and look at your total revenue per mile. $2.91 all miles. That's an incredible number. Your expenses are $1.90. So now I look at it and go, okay, well, maybe there is some room for improvement here because $1.90 seems awful high, except 38 cents of it are wages. Whose wages are those? A driver or you as a corporate owner?
It would be mine as a corporate owner. I fell as an S corp, and that's, I mean, it's my accountant. He adjusts it, for taxes and stuff like that.
Perfect. But now what that tells us is now I have to do just a little math in my head, and it's actually really easy math. Your profit per mile is not $1.02. It's $1.40 because that 38 cents is still yours.
Okay.
So your profit per mile is $1.40. That's a really, really good number. Now, is there anything else we want to look at 2022, or should I jump ahead?
Nope, you can just jump ahead.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm just trying to gauge, I've been doing good. Like on my truck and trailer payment, I paid double on those. And even on my personal stuff, I pay double on my loans and stuff like that. And I know things have slowed down this year quite a bit, so I've adjusted a little bit. And, the three major things you save for business expenses is driver wage, maintenance, and fuel. And, well, I can control the fuel if I slow down and pay more attention to stuff like that. And same with the maintenance, doing more stuff myself.
Right.
But just, the main reason for my call was just trying to figure out where in the industry I'm at. In September, I'll be 5 years on my own. I've been driving almost 20 years altogether.
So
but just trying to get a good feel for,
Let me congratulate you. Not only are these really strong numbers, and even in 2023, when towards the end of the year, things started to get a little wonky, especially in some segments. You still managed to do well over $1 a mile in net profit. Your numbers went down a little bit in 2023, but 5 years in the business and you are already into the top 5%. So if you want to know how you're doing against other single truck owner operators, you're in the top 5%.
That makes me feel really good. And honestly, I don't work all that hard, I guess. I've been lucky. I've been with a really good broker pretty much that whole time. And I know there's guys at this brokerage that do way better than I do. But like I said, part of going out on my own was to have that home time, too. And that's
Jake,
pretty important to me, too.
Let me tell you, you may be surprised to find out that some of those guys you think that it looks like they're doing really good, they might not be. Unless, and I would never speculate on how anybody is doing unless I can see these numbers here, or at the very least see a tax return or something, because I've seen some people who on the surface look like they're really successful and they're holding on by their fingernails.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to. I have to believe that you're pretty comfortable financially now. Yes?
I'm sorry, I lost you, Kevin.
Oh, I was going to say, I have to believe
what was that?
Overall, you are pretty comfortable financially.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, I can tell.
I mean, I'm not like... I don't worry about a steer tire blowing or, mechanical breakdown, stuff like that. I try to put money away for stuff like that. But now looking at 24, this year's not been so stellar. It's been, I guess I don't have to tell anyone that it's not been the greatest, but
right. So here's the good news. We see companies going out of business every day. It's not slowing down, and we need it. We need to get capacity out of the market. This is just how it has to work. I just want to make sure the people that I deal with aren't the capacity that's getting washed out of the market. And there's no reason for you ever to get washed out with these numbers. Now, you may have a bad year. It may even get a little uncomfortable sometimes. There may come a point where you do worry about a major repair. You're not going to worry about a steer tire or a clutch, but there may come a point where it gets a little dicey. Business is risky, but looking at your numbers and where we are in the market, you have really no risk. I mean, your only risk would be overspending personally, and as long as you manage your personal spending, your business has almost no risk.
Okay. That makes me feel a lot better. And I guess I didn't take in, the thinking about adding my wage into the dollar,
that's
per mile profit.
That's your
I didn't
profit.
Think about adding that in either. So that really makes me feel a lot better now.
Yeah. So here's there would be a time where we would take that away. And here's when. If you would have called me and said, here are my numbers, and my plan and my goal is to buy a second truck and put a driver in it. Well, then we would take that wage and say, okay, well, first off, the wage can't be 34 cents a mile like yours is. We do that because there's a tax benefit to paying you as little as possible in your salary. That's why so we would have to say, okay, look, you might be showing 34 cents a mile for pay. We're going to have to pay a driver 60. I mean, it's just, or more in today's market.
Oh, yeah.
Then that would be when we would start pulling those numbers out. But when you are running one truck yourself, any wage we pay you for tax benefits, that's your money, that's your profit still, and then we would add that to the net profit. So when you do that on your numbers, they look really good.
Okay. Yeah, I don't no interest in another truck or anything like that. I just keep it simple and
there you go.
Kind of get things paid off and really throw in for retirement, which that was another thing going out on my own was to get that going, which I do $500 a month into a traditional IRA, or I don't even know what you want to call it, but yeah.
Excellent.
So trying to get that boosted up and going. So, and I've listened to you, man, for years upon years, even back when you were on at midnight,
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day.
Yep.
I always listened to you and that. So.
Well, it's working.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Okay. Well, good deal. All people got to do is listen to you and, read the books or take your course and stuff like that. And listen to the DVDs, and it works.
I'll add one other thing to that, Jake, because there are a lot of people that listen to me and have listened to me for years, and I think it must be because they just like the sound of my voice because they're not doing all the stuff I've been saying all these years, and they struggle. So it's more than just hearing. A lot of people have heard what I've had to say. Only a small percentage actually succeed because you have to go do the hard work. And a lot of people just won't.
Yep. Nope, they won't. They won't do what it takes to...
That's the difference.
The dedication, I guess. Yeah, it sucks at times, but you just got to do it and deal with it. So.
Yep. Perfect.
All right. Well, great. I will get off here and make room for someone else. I appreciate your time, Kevin. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Love good stories like that. Let's. This is going to be the final call of the day. Let's go to Ontario. Ryan, welcome.
Morning, Kevin. How are you?
Doing good. I see we've got an oil sample here. Oh.
Yeah, it's missing a bit of information, so I need some advice what to do here.
Yeah, so...
I have missing information for you. It's based on the time on the oil.
So this is an International 4900. What year is this truck?
1995.
I was going to say it's got to be an old one. What engine?
Yeah, it's an old mechanical. 466 International.
Okay. We're running 1540, and I'm not seeing oil change intervals. How many? Do you always sample at about the same interval?
Yeah,
because I have a whole bunch of history here, but I don't have any miles.
Yeah, so I do it in hours because it tends to run more time than miles.
Okay.
So I do it about every 400 hours. And right now, the latest sample that has the caution flag has got about 1,500 on the oil.
You know what I'm surprised about? We really don't see any fuel dilution. You know what I'm wondering, though? Would you be against taking a sample with a different company just once?
Nope.
Here's why. What I expect to see in a mechanical engine, you talk about bearing wear. Mechanical engines, we used to swap out bearings at 250 or 300,000 miles on a regular basis. That was just a common thing. And the reason we did was because in a mechanical engine, you get a lot of fuel dilution. Because we haven't talked about this in so long, and so many drivers won't even know what I'm talking about anymore. Anybody who was taught how to drive a diesel engine way back when, we had it pounded into our head, do not lug this engine. And what we meant by lugging it was do not allow the RPMs to get too low, especially when there's a lot of power demand. And if drivers didn't do that and they weren't taught that, the RPMs would be low. There would be a big power demand, like you're accelerating or you're pulling a hill or you're pulling a lot of weight, and they would put their foot right down to the floor. And what you're doing on a mechanical engine when you do that is you are flooding that cylinder with more fuel than it can burn. And then that fuel gets forced past the rings down into the crankcase and dilutes the oil. And that's what fuel dilution is. And in a mechanical engine, it's a big, big problem. Even the best drivers would get more fuel dilution than you do in today's electronic engines. Because in today's engines, you can put your foot to the floor all day long, and the engine itself will decide how much fuel to put into the cylinder. And it won't put more than it can burn. So fuel dilution, for that reason, has kind of disappeared. In fact, now we teach people to lug the engine. We're talking about running trucks down at 900 RPMs now. Lugging in the days of mechanical engines meant trying to drive around at 1,300 because these engines tend to run 16, 17, 1,800 RPM. You have lots of signs of fuel dilution and bearing wear, but there's no fuel dilution on the sample. And the reason I want you to try a Polaris sample is because they have, I believe, the absolute best equipment for finding fuel dilution with today's weird fuels. We have biodiesels, biomass diesels, and we've known for a while that a lot of the labs don't pick up fuel dilution anymore. But your viscosity hasn't dropped either. This is interesting. I
did notice, I don't know if yours goes back far enough, but way back, and this is a testament to your show and your people, because the first sample back in October 21 is when I started listening to the Power Hour and some stuff, and that sample had 3.1 fuel dilution on the sample.
And 12.5 viscosity to verify it. So that's a really, and I do have that sample here, that's a really good point that we had fuel dilution and we lost viscosity, and that's where these wear metals come from. But since then, you've had less than 1 on fuel dilution, which is really low. Your viscosity is exactly where it should be. So I don't think we are getting fuel dilution. Can you?
And I kind of, what I did is in between these samples, I've done a bunch of tuning to the truck, like Pete there, Pittsburgh Power helped me with the turbo, and I tuned the Bosch P pump on it, put the boost and pyrometer in it, and I drive it like I run it out. It probably runs on average at 1900 RPM most of the time. And when I shift it, I shift it so it catches it at like 1600.
So you have done a really good job of managing that engine so it doesn't create fuel dilution. And now I can look at all the facts and say, well, there really is no fuel dilution here. So the next place I would look, why are we starting to see some possible bearing wear? And we might be. Although, does this engine have an oil cooler?
Yes. Yeah. And I replaced it about 4 or 5 years ago, and it wasn't a failure. I was into some other systems and I had it apart, so I threw one on it just as a maintenance item.
Okay. Let me ask you this: if you
and the interval on that engine is supposed to be, according to the manual, 300 hours, and I'm out to 1,500 hours on that oil, so I don't know whether I'm just accumulating wear metals.
Do you have a bypass filter?
Because I've gone so long. No, I'm just running. I just change the full flow every time at that 300-400 hour interval. I'll put a new full flow on it, but no, it doesn't have bypass on it.
Okay. Help me with this, maybe. I almost never deal with hours. If you were going to try and correlate the number of hours to something comparable in miles, what would be your best guess? Would you consider this a high hour, high mileage engine right now?
I would say it would be around 45 to 50,000 miles if I was putting distance on it.
The change interval.
Because it just does local run.
Or is that
the change interval? No, the change interval would be I think 7,000 miles is what the manufacturer recommends.
Got it. Okay.
And I've got close to 50,000 miles on the oil.
Okay. I don't see that as a problem. I don't see the oil itself breaking down at all. That oil is fine. The wear metals are just a little odd. And on a mechanical engine, we do worry more about wear metals, although you're doing a really good job of managing it.
I have been noticing my oil pressure when it gets hot is starting to droop. It's still within the factory specs of the engine, but when the engine was at 10,000 hours, I was probably idling at 50 PSI, and now I'm down to maybe 35 hot.
Okay.
So I am getting a little loss in oil pressure.
It sounds to me like you're pretty mechanical yourself, pretty handy.
Yeah, I am a licensed mechanic by trade. So
if this were me, I wouldn't be really worried about it. But when I had some extra time, I would probably pull the pan and inspect the bearings myself.
Okay.
Just in case. I'm not seeing
and it might be due
pattern.
Just like it's.
Yeah. There's
at 16,000 hours on the engine. Like there's probably in miles, there's probably 250,000 miles on the truck.
On a mechanical engine, then it would be time to start looking at bearings. There's some indication here, but it's not really clear. There isn't a real clear pattern. The copper could have come from an oil cooler, but we did have some lead. Lead was climbing, and then copper starts to show up. So that's a pretty typical pattern for a bearing. I would just pull the pan and take a look at them.
Okay, and I did put a new turbocharger on it in the spring. None of that would be turbocharger wear, would it? Like from it being new?
No.
Okay, perfect. So second question, would you change the oil now that's in it? Or would you wait? I'm done probably in another. I get one more interval out of it before I'd have, before I would generally have the time to pull the bearings out on it. in my season.
There would be no reason not to keep running this truck in this oil until you've got time to pull the pan and change the oil then. Whenever that makes sense for you. Like I said, you don't need to be in a hurry. We're not seeing an absolute bearing failure here, but we're seeing some signs, so it should be checked. And then at that point, you might as well just change the oil.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of what I was thinking too. I don't work in the winter, so I can pull the truck in and do a bearing roll to it this winter or whatever. And
there you go.
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate all the help on it, because it was confusing me as well, just watching it creep up, and I thought
it's a little confusing.
And then with that oil pressure drooping.
Right. The signs are there, but nothing that I'd be overly worried about right now.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Thanks.
Awesome. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. All right. We are going to wrap this up today. I am going to get set up for the book club today. So if you want to join me on X itself, if you want to participate, if you want to speak, you need to be on X. If you want to listen, you can just listen on the app. We'll be broadcasting the whole thing live on the app today. We'll see how the book club goes. Here's the whole point. If all this turns out to be is me going on there and doing a book review, that I'm going to try another idea at some point for a space. I really need audience participation to make shows like this work. I could have made the debate show work if somebody would debate me, but if you won't, there's not a lot I can do. Same thing with the book club. I don't want to be the only one talking. I want to get feedback. I want to hear from other people about books. And then at the end, we'll have a discussion about what book we want to do next. And I don't want to be the one picking the books all the time either. I don't really want to lead the book club. I just want to facilitate the book club, meaning we need other people to jump in and join us. So we will see you then. That is coming up in, geez, I can't even do easy math this morning. 2.5 hours, noon Pacific time. Is that right? Yes, it is. We will see you then. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.